Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Traumaplicity talk show with Dr. Amanda Hellman, author, coach, consultant, and speaker. Every week, we have our Traumaplicity talk show on my Amanda Hellman author and speaker page. And Traumaplicity is trauma plus simplicity equals simplicity, or Traumaplicity, which is really looking at simple ways to heal trauma and complex trauma and using different processes. Every week, I have the privilege and honor to have a new guest on the show to share their story. Today, I have my friend and colleague, Tameka Anderson, with me. And I've known Tameka for quite a while. She has recently published a book that is amazing, and it's Parenting the Confident Kid. Do I have that correctly? Did I say that correctly? Oh, child. I was close. I was in my head. I saw your picture, man. So you certainly, and Tameka does a lot with coaching, working with children and youth and families. So I'm really honored to have you, Tameka. And with that, I'd love you to share your story with the audience, or part of your story.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. So for me, I have, ever since I was born, really, I have been inundated with trauma. I was born addicted to crack cocaine. So because of that, I was taken immediately from my mom at birth and placed in foster care, where I stayed until I signed myself out at age 19. So in between that time, I went back and forth from my mom to foster homes and back. And when I was with my mom, there was a lot that I've seen drugs, alcohol, abuse, violence, death. We were even actually running away from someone who was actively trying to kill my mother. So trauma has been the name of the game for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And again, a lot of heavy different things, especially with when you said born, addicted to crack cocaine, having to run away, seeing death, seeing many things that people, and especially children, shouldn't see, and that mattered. And I knowing you, just spending time healing and really having to go deep because of that. And so thank you again. And that is, I know, covered in your book, as well as practical steps to support people who are going through that. So when you're looking at that, and you've had different journeys, different seasons, what would you say are 3 or 5, right? Thinking that simple steps to a more complex process that people can use?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't really say any step without saying therapy. I think that had it not been for trauma therapy, I don't know if I would be where I am today, right? So, first and foremost, find a trauma therapist, like for sure, because your family, friends, relatives, colleagues, they're not therapists. And just dumping your stuff on people is not therapy, right? There's guided practice that they use. They have actual methods that they take you through so that you can go through it safely. And so that's always going to be my first go-to.
Mhm.
Please go to therapy. um, but besides that, right, you do have to do the work yourself. So for me, part of one of the greatest things that I could have ever done was find out my top 2 love languages. Right. So the reason why finding out my top 2 love languages were so important is because it helped me to learn how to, first of all, identify the ways that I need to be loved and identify ways to show myself love. So, for example, my top 2 love languages are quality time and gifts. So what I do is I spend alone time. That is like the best thing in the world to me. Is like spending time alone. I'll usually have my Bible. Sometimes I'll just sit in nature and just be quiet. Other times I'll pray. Sometimes I might cry. But just spending time by myself is like really good for me because it helps me to show myself love, right? In that way. And then buying myself gifts. So doing stuff like that, that is another way that I would say, um, love languages, right? So have you done anything with love languages?
I love the love. I love the love languages as well. And it's interesting because my top one is like yours. It's the quality time, and I like acts of service. And it's hard for me because the gifts one isn't as much mine, but other people it was. So I learned it. And I had to learn that for some people, it's not, they love to get thoughtful gifts for people. Not that I don't like to be thoughtful, it's just not in that way that I always do that. But I came to understand that, right? Or people enjoy those gifts. That's something important to them. And there are times where I enjoy that. So I really had to learn that all of them are amazing, right? Depending on what we all need. And learning that so I've definitely done it, but quality time like you is important, whether with myself or other people, and really spending that time, not even always having pictures. Some people love pictures, but for me, it's just the time. So yeah. And I loved how you mentioned, right, one of the things that you did for simple stuff, but making the choice may not always be easy for people, and that would be the therapy. And I also love that you mentioned there I am. You also mentioned the love languages, and then obviously we talked about it. But those are important for people out there in the audience. You know, if you're starting, just the first step of being brave to say, "Oh, I might need counseling." Everybody does. I think 8 billion people on the planet all need it. So you're not alone. We're not there yet. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like, and then after that, I would say another step would be like journaling, writing it down. One of the things that I realize is that when you're so much in your head, you're so much in your head and you don't know the stories that you're telling yourself because it's up here. So when you are able to actually write it down and see
Mm,
it, that's the only way you can change the story. Because I remember
yeah.
for me, I was telling myself things that were not
Mhm.
true in my
Yeah.
head. So it was easy to rehearse it and
Mhm.
constantly keep that story on replay because it was in my head. But the
Right.
moment I started, like, what I would do is when I would get the thought, when I started feeling sad, and I would immediately grab my journal and I would write what was going on. What I realized is that looking at it, I was like, huh. So then that was a way for me to be aware of it. So now that I'm aware, okay, now I can change that. So, but yeah, that's another way.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I think you're there. There
Yeah,
you
I'm
are.
here.
Yeah, I think it went kind of a little bit, but I heard about the journaling. It was good. Journaling we talked about is important. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if I'm freezing. I don't know if it's my computer or my phone. But no, I heard about the journaling. I think that's important for just processing, like you mentioned, and even if you're looking at change and beliefs and all of that are certainly important. And then, so those are three. I'm sure you have a lot, and definitely in your book you do as well.
I
But
one more.
I know. So I'm thinking, do you want to share more? Or do you want to share encouragement for people out there that are maybe on the beginning of their journey or in the middle of it?
So I have one more to share and then I
Okay,
can.
sure. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
So the final one that I would say that are simple steps that most people don't think about is do what I like to call a friend inventory, where you're looking at your friend circle and you're inventorying them. And you're simply just writing down the name of your friend. And besides the name of your friend, you're going to write one of two words. You're going to either say energize or empty, right?
Mm,
And that means when you think about this particular person and when you're in their presence, do you feel energized or do you feel empty?
mm,
Right? And so after you've done that, the people that you notice that you feel empty around, try to spend a little less time with them until you can kind of like phase
mm,
it out. If you can't just go cold turkey, like I understand, I get it. But just think about it. Every time you're around this person, they're kind of emptying you. And so that contributes to those feelings and thoughts and loops and trauma, stuck cycles. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that. And that's a good way. And it could be a twofold, right? Because sometimes in my lifetime, and I know we've talked about this, sometimes it is the other person, right? That might be draining us, or it might be too close to what there's many complexities, but sometimes they're too close to what we've been through, or they may not be in a healthy area while we're processing and wanting to grow. And then sometimes we may be in a different place, right? Where eventually you might connect with that person again. You don't know. It just depends on each person if they're evolving, right? Each person and their healing journey if they want to keep going deeper. But I love the idea of having, Tameka, of having that list and saying, are they energizing to me overall, right? We're not going to be perfect, but are they energizing? Do we have give and take, or is it always take or always give? And that's unhealthy. And so it's a good way to, I like that because it's a good way to assess myself, right? Assess the friendship, assess what's going on. And as you said, maybe fading it out, or it might be for a time, or perhaps it was just a friend for a season. And sometimes we may not know. We may think it is just a season or a long term and things happen, but that's a great strategy. So some of you out there, it is good to always look at your friends who are our friends, right? Is it give and take? And sometimes in our lives, depending what you're going through, it might be a little different, but then you want to have balance, right? Sometimes we have really hard things like loss or death where we can't be in the same place, but then does our friend reciprocate? So those are great reflections to me. I always appreciate your practicality, my big word for tonight. And so on that, thinking of people who may be in the journey or they're taking that brave step, what is a word of encouragement, a phrase of encouragement you would give them?
So I would say it's hard. And that's okay, right? It's not going to be easy. That's okay too. Some days you are going to not feel good. That's okay. Honor your feelings, honor how you feel. As a matter of fact, I guess this would probably be another practical step, but it's something that I've practiced doing. When you're feeling good, write yourself like a little love letter, like write
Yeah.
some nice things that you like about yourself or whatever. And then put it in a place where you can easily get to it. Because on those days when it gets hard and you feel stuck and you just it's like, oh, so rough. You can pull that letter out. I remember when I did that the first time and I was able to pull that letter out and oh my God, it helped me. I just smile and grin from ear to ear. And because it was written by me, I believed it.
Ah,
That's what
that's
I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And it could be a nice little letter, and you could always update it or bring it out. I have journals that I do that for certain things. And it could even update, or maybe a nice poem that someone gave you, or something to remind you of other people, right? Sometimes we don't always see the qualities we have. And so sometimes we write that journal, but as we're growing in our self love and loving us, all of us, right? The stuff that we're still evolving in.
Yeah.
But loving all of us, right? And so, and all of our story. We might not love what happened, but loving our story and what may the good might come out of it. So I love that you shared that. And hopefully out there, if you haven't done that, it can start maybe even with just a line. Maybe you're scared to write it down because it's hard to hear good things about yourself, but one step, one line, even your name, and then a step, right? Maybe a little bullet of a couple things, then it can grow. So if that's you today, that can start your journey in deeply loving you and knowing that you can be proud of yourself. So thank you, Tameka. That kind of made me think of that to spin off of, but I love that. So thank you so much for your time. And those of you watching on the author page, certainly I can drop the link just so you can see Tameka's book. I know there's a lot of you in on my author page or awaiting my book coming out. Hopefully I'll be making announcements coming out soon. So certainly there's a lot of us authors on here, but Tameka has a great book sharing her story and also practical tips so you can get more from that book. So thank you, Tameka, my friend from Georgia, while I'm in Pennsylvania. And I hope you have a great night, and everyone else have a great night. And we'll catch you next week at 7 p.m. once again on Traumaplicity Talk Show. So thank you. Let me
Thank
press
you.
Stop record here.